My name is Nick Floyd. I have a long history with Magic the Gathering. I created the Dandan variant. Now I'm creating this. Welcome to Magic Storytime. Today's trivia question is, in August 1998, Wizards of the Coast released the first unset. Unsets are magic sets that are not serious magic cards, and were mostly full of weird mechanics, references to outside things, jokes, and puns. The four sets all have names that start with un. Up until the most recent unset, they were silver bordered to signify they were not typically legal magic cards for Eternal formats. Now unsets are black bordered like all other magic sets. The non-eternal legal cards are designated by the acorn symbol here. There are four unsets in Magic the Gathering, but only the first one was designed and developed by a single designer-developer. What was the name of the first unset from 1998, and who was the sole designer and developer of that set for Wizards of the Coast? Stay to the end of the video for the answer. This is episode 16, Laramie Gets a Game Store, Spring 1999. Two of the local Magic players in Laramie announced in late '98 they would be opening a game store early the following year. It was located across Grand Avenue, just across UW dormitories, which was perfect since it cut my walk to play Magic by about 90%. It was just across the street. One of the owners, who I will call Money because that was his nickname, had a bit of an obsession and fascination with the cryptozoological figure of Sasquatch or Bigfoot, so they named their store Bigfoot's Lair. For the next year or so, whenever I talked about the store, my mother thought I was saying Bigfoot's Lair. I don't think Money would be happy that she was advocating for the Bigfoot's murder, but Bigfoot's Lair was awesome nonetheless. Of course, Bigfoot's Lair had sealed Magic products and several glass cases full of singles. They also had a limited stock of other games, most notably some Dungeons & Dragons core rulebooks. This was not long after Wizards of the Coast had acquired TSR, the company that produced D&D, and the game was still under the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition banner. I had played D&D with friends in junior high school, and it had been a few years, but now with a game store so accessible, it seemed like a no-brainer that I should run a game. I am a perpetual dungeon master, the player who creates the story and referees the game they play. That's the common role for someone who has a mind for game design and teaching game rules. Anyway, I put up this sign in the store as soon as Bigfoot's Lair got off the ground. Yep, I still have the poster. Very Windows 95 era graphics, but oh well. But the sign was only up for a single evening before I had a full game of interested players. I won't bore you talking about the characters in the game, but our players consisted of one of the store's owners, my current dorm roommate, a longtime Magic and D&D player, Doug, one of the pimps, and Amanda, who I knew from the Beer Gardens Magic group, and I had already had a bit of a crush on. Doug and my roommate were the only ones who had never played D&D before, but both were intrigued by the idea and took to it like ducks to water. As far as Magic at Bigfoot's Lair went, we played a bunch of Urza's block limited at the lair, and Urza's Legacy was released not long after they opened. But the big release that year was Classic 6th Edition in April. 6th Edition came with a large rules update. See the trivia question of episode 15, link in the show notes. Because I was about the biggest Magic player in Laramie and followed the game closely, the owners of Bigfoot's Lair asked me to be on hand for the release of 6th Edition to explain the rules changes to the players that would be attending, and I was happy to oblige. Anyway, Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons at Bigfoot's Lair was great. They also had an N64 and a VCR hooked up to a TV and allowed renting time on them. We also had some privileges because some of us were close friends with the owners. It was a very cool hangout for us gamer nerds. The last week of school that semester, I was asked to put up a still frame of the famous Patterson-Gimli Bigfoot footage in the large display window to be made out of Magic Commons. Amanda assisted me in stapling the cards to the wall. She and I had become closer friends that semester, as I somewhat inadvertently began flirting with her through her D&D character and a non-player character I had originally created to rob the party of their equipment. Anyway, to my surprise, she asked me out as we were finishing up the wall. Our first date was to the movie theater to see The Matrix, which I had already seen twice already, once with my father and once with the pimps. I was pretty enamored with The Matrix after seeing it the first time, and wanted to expose others to it. Anyway, Amanda and I dated on and off that summer, and the following fall semester. That fall, we went to the Wyoming State Championships in Cheyenne together. But that's a magic story for another time, and a very different episode, coming soon. Today's trivia question is, what was the name of the first unset from 1998? And who was the sole designer and developer of that set for Wizards of the Coast? Answer. The first unset released in August 1998 was Unglued. Every card was designed by Mark Rosewater, who was a Magic designer and the writer of Magic the Puzzling for The Duelist, but wouldn't become the head Magic designer until 2003, a title he still holds to this day. It stands to reason that Rosewater would create a Magic set full of jokes and gags because, before coming to Wizards of the Coast, Rosewater was a writer on sitcoms in Hollywood. I have a history with Unglued. When it was released in the summer of '98, I told local players at my LGS that I was going to make a deck or decks around the rock, paper, scissors creatures, and people, they just gave them to me. This wasn't long after I created the first Dandan deck. Rock, paper, scissors magic was one of the 3 Magic Gathering variants I plastered online with Forgetful Fish and Trippin in 2016. Besides Forgetful Fish, it is the oldest and most refined Magic variant I have designed. It is not in the Dandan format and is not a shared library game. Instead, each of 3 players takes one of the 3 identical 40-card decks. Identical aside from the fact that where one has rock lobsters, the other 2 have paper tigers and scissor lizards respectively. This naturally creates a situation where each player has one opponent he wants to eliminate, the player who locks down his creatures, and another opponent that is trying to eliminate him. A player must often protect the very enemy that is gunning for him, because if that player is eliminated, there is very little preventing a swift defeat with near useless creatures. Though RPS is very fun and almost as good a game as Dandan, and being multiplayer should appeal to Commander players, it has not gotten nearly the play or the buzz Dandan has. I recently realized why that likely is. To play Dandan, a single player needs to build one 80-card deck, a third of which are basic or fairly inexpensive lands. A set of rock, paper, scissors, on the other hand, takes 120 cards, none of which are lands. Read my designer's notes in the Google Docs to understand why that is. Most cards in RPS are very inexpensive, but the number of cards required is a hindrance to getting into it, or even trying. Recently I added printable proxy inserts for the entire set of cards to my Google Doc primer for it. All you have to do is print the appropriate number of pages, cut them out, insert them into a card sleeve with a random common or base land, and try RPS today. The link to the Google Doc is in this video's show notes. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment.